Welcome everybody to our One Wolf call. I'm Mary Beth Gardam, located in Iowa City, Iowa. Our technical support person this evening is Alan Thomas from the mountains of North Carolina. Please mute yourselves when you're not speaking. This meeting is sponsored by members of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, U.S. section. It's a public call and we're recording. The video will be posted in a few days to WILPF's YouTube channel and the One WILPF Call webpage. Ellen will place those links into the chat, and they are also on the text pad. WILPF is the oldest international women's peace organization in the world, founded in 1915 by Jane Addams of Hull House. There are WILPF branches across the U.S., and we are one of 50 WILPF sections across the world. You can find out more and join us at our website at www.wilpfus.org/join. And that information is also located in the text pad and on the in the chat. These One WILPF calls connect our organization to one another and keep us strong across the U.S. We are women-centered, though we welcome male, queer, and members of the trans community as well. Please remain muted when you're not speaking to reduce background noise. Please place any questions or comments in the chat. If you can, capitalize them so we can find them easily. Ellen will post the agenda in the chat now, and you can add information on this call's Google Doc text pad. Just make sure to add your information under the red line at the end. The link to the text pad will be posted frequently during this call. There are certainly big items in the news that concern progressive women everywhere. The new conflict in Israel, continuing conflict in Ukraine, the historic ouster of the Republican Speaker of the House last week, continuing busing of thousands of immigrants from Texas to sanctuary cities like New York and Chicago, with very limited resources available to care for them. And of course, amid all that, the nuclear clock keeps ticking. Today, October 12th, was originally Columbus Day, and now it's part of the Indigenous People celebration. So it's only right that we hear from a representative of the Shoshone Nation about a topic that has been at the heart of WILPF's activism since the 1950s, nuclear testing on sacred native lands and the need for nuclear abolition. We'll hear from him in just a moment. Right now, I'm happy to introduce one of our DISARM co-chairs, Ellen Thomas, who has been acquainted with our featured speaker for a number of years. And this year, when the film Oppenheimer provided a platform on which to build activism around nuclear weapons and nuclear abolition, WILPF's DISARM Committee members used that opportunity to continue to build on their tireless efforts to gain support for the treaty to ban nuclear weapons and to forge and promote actions that built on growing awareness. Ellen, welcome. Please introduce our speaker.
I'm going to show you a nice picture of Ian at the Nevada test site. And he's holding the nuclear weapons are illegal sign that was made when the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons went into effect. And Ian Zabarte is a diplomat for the Western Shoshone National Council and the principal man for foreign affairs for on behalf of the Western Shoshone people in Nevada, whose land was taken for the testing of nuclear weapons and the attempted taking of the land for burying nuclear waste which was stopped during the Obama years, but and I think in large part because of the work that Ian has done. I've known Ian for a couple of decades now. I'm very sad to hear that you're not feeling well, Ian, but would you please come and tell us about what it is that you're doing if you're not feeling too bad, to give us a bit of a background of what you're doing and what's important that we should know.
Thank you. Yeah, I just haven't been feeling well, so I'm here now, and I'll give you a briefing on what's up and how we got here. So the Western Shoshone have a perspective of freedom that predates what the United States has acquired and carved out. So when we entered into these treaties, it is as a free people seeking to maintain our existence and our prior freedoms, rights, titles, and interests. And by the time the United States engaged in the Civil War, the Shoshone allied ourselves with the Union to prosecute the war against the South. Our resources fueled the Union's capacity to win the war against the South. Our lands, indigenous treaties, are what hold this United States together. All Americans have inherent rights by the Indian treaties, because all land would go back to those legitimate accesses. So in the case of the Western Shoshone, it'd be the 1863 treaty covers about 30 million acres in the West. We always had horses, and when the United States took an interest in Shoshone land because of the gold, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management started to attack the Shoshone people. They blamed our horses, our livestock, destruction of the range that was caused by U.S. nuclear weapons testing, and took our economy. This was a pattern in practice. They denied us loans. They denied us citizenship. We weren't even citizens until 1924, yet we fought in World War II as allies of the United States. The Shoshone had 4 Shoshone code talkers in the European theater. In World War II, after we became United States citizen, we had 40 code talkers, but you don't hear a whole lot of that. The Shoshone language helped save the world from fascism, and that is our relationship to the United States and other Americans. And what we're dealing with right now, the land hasn't been taken. It's there. I see it every day. I'm on the land. What is taken is our dignity and our respect and our health. Other Americans came in secret to our country and detonated over 928 nuclear weapons of mass destruction, and the radioactive fallout went around the world. The radiation is still out there, but America isn't talking about it. It's part of the culture of secrecy. And so we began to investigate what was happening to us. This is at a time when, as I mentioned, our livestock economy was destroyed. The Bureau of Land Management, the other BLM, decided that not only were we not to have our very lives, because the radioactive fallout went everywhere and was killing our people, the United States came after our livelihood as well. As a child, we always had horses. We always had the nicest horses, the best horses. And in about 1970s, 1980s, they started coming after our horses. And that's when we became aware of the nuclear weapons testing. But we didn't know that the radiation was really what was destroying the land. We were only guessing at that time. In the 90s, we began to investigate the adverse health consequences that were affecting our people. So we brought researchers from the Childhood Cancer Research Institute in Worcester, Massachusetts, to help us. This is a collaborative research project. We can't have other Americans studying us, because that'd be no better than human radiation experimentation by perpetrators of crimes. I will just lay it out there because our title remains unextinguished. And when we began investigating the health consequences, we took the researchers hunting, fishing, gathering. We took them to our sweats, to our prayers, and showed them how we prepared our food. And based on diet, mobility, and shelter, diet, what we ate, how much we ate, and how often, shelter, where our houses were, what they were made out of, and mobility, where we went, what we did there, hunting, praying, gathering of our medicines. These lifestyles, these living lifeways closer to the land, increased our risk of exposure 7 to 15 times for adults, to 30 times for youth, and up to 60 times for in utero to 12 years old. And in other parts of the world, you know, Fukushima or Kazakhstan or Chernobyl, there are health registries and surveilling and monitoring. Not here. It's not done in the United States, and it needs to be done. We need to do it for all Americans. That's really what I see as needed. That universal health care is what we all need, because the radiation is everywhere and it's still out there. In the meantime, we need to support the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. It's going through the National Defense Act, and that's, in my opinion, not the best way to do this, because this is the only way that people will address the matter, at least for the military. But we need to have something. We need something more. So I'm pushing for something more than that in the future, and I hope other people will support that. Part of that is the creation of our treaty reservation. We don't have that. The United States Constitution, Article 6, Section 2, treaties are supreme, allow for the creation of the treaty reservation. The treaty's in full force and effect, and that's what we need. We need a safe place to live. So once we began to understand what was happening to us, we were engaged as well in the $15 billion proposed Yucca Mountain high-level nuclear waste repository. That site was developed within Western Shoshone Treaty territory. Nevada took in billions of dollars taxes. Nevada takes in a lot of taxes from Shoshone property, from gold mines, from lithium mines, from oil, from the proposed Yucca Mountain repository, from the Nevada test site workers, from the Nellis Air Force bombing and gunnery range workers. All of this tax money is going to Nevada. Nevada takes that money and gives it to every other unit of local government except Indians. We call that racism. We call that violence. We call that taxation without representation. And that is an abuse and exploitation of the Shoshone people. We need to fix those things. And there seems to be no will by the United States to do that, even though there is an obligation to protect, as well as there's an obligation to restrain. And that is I think the most useful part of any of these Indian treaties right now. These nuclear weapons of mass destruction violate every Indian peace treaty. So other Americans need to stand up and say, hey, we're part of these treaties with these Indians too, and we need to restrain our acts. There's another way these Indian treaties can be used. Wherever there's a nuclear power plant planned, the proponent must prove ownership under the Title 10 of the United States Code, licensing of domestic nuclear facilities. So wherever you know there's a reactor and there's an Indian tribe, somebody needs to step up and say, hey, this violates the treaty, and or there has been no extinguishment of Indian title in those cases. So if there's a treaty out there, tribes have rights, titles, and interests, and only way to undo that is to abrogate the treaty, and that hasn't been done in the Shoshone case, and we don't expect it to be done. We have the only ratified treaty that includes California, Nevada, we have land in Idaho, and Utah. But that's how we got into the Atomic Safety Licensing Board on the proposed Yucca Mountain high-level nuclear waste repository in 2008. Ownership of land, our primary contention. Ownership of water, our second contention. Our NEPA contention that the Department of Energy, adopting the Environmental Protection Agency's radiation protection standard, didn't use an appropriate context for determining the risk to the Shoshone people, because we said that we would be living an indigenous lifestyle, you know, eating deer and antelope and rabbits and pine nuts in 1,000 or 10,000 years. And the Department of Energy said, no, you'll be living on a ranch, getting your water out of a well, having pigs and chickens and cows. So they didn't see our contentions as they ought to be seen, because we brought them. And the Department of Energy denies any argument that doesn't support licensing. So that's kind of how we got to the situation where we are now. The proposed Yucca Mountain high-level nuclear waste repository, after $15 billion of U.S. taxpayer money, the Department of Energy cannot prove ownership, even with the Bureau of Land Management, the other BLM's, master title plats, which are the land status record of the United States government. The Department of Energy cannot prove ownership to Yucca Mountain or the Nevada test site. So now what's happening to activists in other places, I hear, such as in Georgia, where the Cop City is, I believe, they're charging activists with racketeering. I can't wait to face those charges over here. It's going to be a different situation, because the United States doesn't own our country, doesn't own our land, and never has. And it would end up at the Nevada test site and the courts in Nevada. There was a case in 1883 where the Nevada Supreme Court ruled that it does not have jurisdiction over the Shoshone. What happened in 1908 was another case, State versus Buckaroo Jack, with a Northern Paiute that said, if an Indian kills another Indian on or off the reservation, it should be heard at trial. Any other evidence, such as a treaty, and the Northern Paiute don't have that, that would divest the court of jurisdiction. So we haven't done that. We know how to do it now. I know how to do it now. The only other problem is we can't have a lawyer do it, because the lawyer is an officer of the court, and as such admits the jurisdiction of the court. But this is the plan for stopping the testing as it is expected to come up again, because the United States has the new W93 on the drawing board, the W93 standing for Weapons Design 93. I think Trinity might have been Weapons Design 1. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Yucca Mountain is still continuing. It is being used to justify licensing of the site in Texas and in New Mexico. Those are being challenged as well, and appears that the NRC has overstepped its authority in those cases, but those are still continuing. So that's kind of the long and the short of it, and I hope that's helpful. And I'm not going anywhere. I feel pretty good for having 30 or 40 years in, since 1986. So I wasn't feeling well for a couple of weeks, but I'm slowly getting better. It's nothing serious. And I got another 30 years in.
Ian, when we talked earlier, you called what was going on with the Shoshone people and the Western Plains folks, indigenous genocide. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And also, you referred to the studies done that show the extra impact of nuclear testing and nuclear mining, these uranium mines, particularly on women and girls.
Yeah, so I don't use the word genocide lightly. When I say genocide, I mean as defined by the UN Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in 1948, and the US enactments in 1988, the Proxmire Act, signed by President Ronald Reagan, believe it or not, and the 2009 Human Rights Enforcement Act. The United States in 1990, this is the Red Book, and created, I don't know if you can see all that.
Yep.
Department of Energy created a study protocol of cultural triage. And there it is.
That's a
Yeah.
little harder to read.
Okay, cultural triage. It's down at the bottom here. Anyway, I'll read it to you. When provided with an opportunity to have input in the process, Indian people demonstrated a willingness to try to protect some cultural resources potentially affected by an unwanted project. Process has been termed cultural triage, which is defined as the forced choice situation in which an ethnic group is faced with the decision to rank in importance equally valued cultural resources that could be affected by a proposed development project. So to tease out the important parts, cultural triage. Triage is a word of French origin. It means to sort or cull according to quality. Its normal usage is flood, famine, and natural disaster. In this situation, what we have is the United States Department of Energy acting as broker for the nuclear industry, determining which parts of Shoshone living culture cannot survive for the benefit of the United States and the profit of the nuclear industry. Again, the features of cultural triage are it's forced, it's race-based, and it's for development. We don't have a need to force destruction of the Shoshone people. What we have here is again, the Department of Energy and other Americans not restraining acts that violate the treaty, not restraining acts that destroy people for profit, destroying our living life well. We have a long history with the United States, and we've been facing abuse for a long time. And I submit this is genocide. Now, in order to prove genocide, intent must be proven. The intent is the culture of secrecy, because you will never know what's killing you when it's done in secret. I get this from the physicist who the Russian bomb. So these are some of the ideas. It's this culture of secrecy that we've been facing. So how do we deal with this? How do we address this? We have to bring them out in the open. They're sitting in my country right now. There are workers there, other Americans who are workers that are suffering. The atomic vets, they didn't get help. We have workers out there that have taken some risk and they've gotten paid, and they're still dying and being killed. But you know what? That's happening to a lot of other Americans. I think in the 1997 radioactive iodine in fallout from U.S. nuclear weapons testing, one of the estimates was 6 million Americans were exposed to the radioactive fallout. Well, we're talking as well cascading health effects to their children and their grandchildren during the period of weapons testing. We're talking 75 years ago now. And these are cascading health effects that manifest in children. They also focus on the girls 2-to-1 over the boys. So next month, we're doing a Native American Forum on nuclear issues. This is primarily to help me and my people understand and maintain our capacity to address these nuclear issues. And as time goes on, I find these other ways that we can find ways to cooperate. We need health studies. We need registries. We need monitoring. We need these kinds of work to happen, but people can't do it to us. They have to work collaboratively with us. So we've done that collaborative research, and we want to continue to do it. I'd rather do that than get stuck in this Yucca Mountain for another 30 years. And it's been since 1986 that I've been working on this Yucca Mountain issue, and it's still the law of the land, even though it violates treaties. And we have difficulty forcing other Americans to restrain their acts, to restrain their legislative malfeasance. That's what the Nuclear Waste Policy Act is, in my opinion. And I think I've defined that genocide, it is I like to sometimes express it more politely, that it violates peremptory norms, which is that bright red line in international law. And we're looking at ways to bring this to the World Court, to address these other Americans, to bring it to the United States government. And we need your help to do that.
Okay, are there questions for Ian? Please raise your hand or put them in the chat and we'll call on you. It was a lot of information. Thank you, Ian. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for all this information. You talked about courts of jurisdiction. Could you just expand on that a bit more? Which courts you are or are not allowed to bring your cases to?
We brought our cases to every court in the land. So the idea is to exhaust all of our domestic remedies. And a couple of years ago, the Marshall Islands were bringing a case to the International Court of Justice, I believe, and the court ruled that they hadn't exhausted all their domestic remedies. But in the case of the Shoshone, we have in due course gone through the American legal system. The Dan sisters were charged with trespassing in 1971. They were acquitted of trespassing, but the United States, in a technical, tactical approach, sought to divest us or quiet our ability to defend ourselves. They were attacking our livestock, so they were taking our income, our economy away, at the same time that we're trying to defend against their lies that say we don't own land. They came and told us we don't own land. And there's a film narrated by Robert Redford. It's called Broken Treaty at Battle Mountain. And the United States Department of Interior are there in that film, lying to our people. And my elders always knew it. We always knew it. And now we have an understanding of how to assert sovereignty. But what was your question again?
The courts, which courts were you?
Oh, yeah.
Have you got all the way to the Supreme Court, for example?
Yes, I know where I was going. So the lies told by the United States prompted some of our people to file a claim in the United States Indian Claims Commission, where only claims were lawyers were allowed to represent, and only claims lawyers could be paid. And no land was to be given back. In the course of these some 300 cases, there were 2 where no finding that a taking had occurred was found. That was the one was the Western Shoshone case. The United States went on in the Dan case to say that when the Shoshone claim was appropriated, even though no finding of a taking had occurred, they said that allowed Section 70U bar further claims against the United States. And so that's where it is. So we have to assert our sovereignty against the United States, and we didn't know how to do that. We're just constantly being attacked by the United States. So in the Dan case, even though the case went to the United States Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit Court, just prior to the Supreme Court, I think it was 1986 or 88, the Ninth Circuit Court, in the same case of the Dan sisters, said Western Shoshone title was never in issue and never actually litigated. And then the Supreme Court said that Shoshone title must be deemed to be extinguished, believed to be extinguished, because it never, in fact, actually has been, not even to this day. But the United States Supreme Court said our title must be deemed to be extinguished by the gradual encroachment of whites and others in the application of federal land laws. Some of the things that were contemplated in the treaty, they could not have extinguished the title. It's just the proclamation by the Supreme Court, which in this case is a fraud, because the title was not, in fact, actually extinguished. And we assert that in all of our activities. We issued 30,000 permits to activists at the test site to stop nuclear weapons testing. We brought our contention of ownership to the Atomic Safety Licensing Board of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission could not issue a license because title has not been proven by the Department of Energy and cannot be proven because the Treaty of Ruby Valley is in full force and effect. What the Dans did in 2001 was brought our case to the Organization of American States, and we also went to Geneva several times. This is part of how the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was created, because in the 90s we were putting pressure. All of us engaged in these efforts to stop nuclear weapons testing, put pressure on the World Health Organization and the UN General Assembly to seek an advisory opinion on the illegality of nuclear weapons. And the court said that the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons would violate international human rights law. And, to 2017, I believe it was, or was it 2019? Treaty on Prohibition of 2021, excuse me, is the result of those efforts. We also took our case to the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, the CERD, and that I think was in 2006. And the United States has simply not responded. They are violating our basic human rights, our rights to to property, our rights to our identity, and these other Americans are engaged in these kinds of genocide, in a word.
Thank you. Hardy Carcamo, you have a question.
Hi, I want to ask you, you say something in a month from now, you will meet other tribes about this topic. How will be and with who?
Well, we do a forum on nuclear issues almost every year for the since 1992. I think we've done maybe 15 or so of these events, and this is how we create collaboration. This is how we educate ourselves to maintain our capacity to understand what's going on and where the nuclear threats are, what is the new information, and how we can create and maintain awareness among our people. A lot of people don't understand that the fallout is everywhere. So we need to create that awareness. A lot of people don't know that near Simi Valley at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory is the worst American nuclear reactor catastrophe, a meltdown, just near LA, just near Los Angeles. And people don't know. Awareness is key. Here near Las Vegas, they've moved 3 million people in the past 30 years. They go into the desert and they kick up dust. They put their trucks and their motorcycles and their campers at the edge of the dry lake beds. And we as Shoshone know that heavy objects on top of these dry lake beds move, and those heavy particles, plutonium and uranium, they would blow across the lake bed and collect around the edge of these dry lake beds like a bathtub ring around your bathtub. And this is where people go to recreation and they're kicking up dust. Awareness is important. This is what we're trying to do. Try to share information, create an understanding. I want to talk about how we can defend ourselves from the new weapons design. For me, the priority is stopping the new weapons design test, okay? We don't need it. We don't want it. The world doesn't need it. This course of weapons and war and building economies for that purpose is wrong. We need to change that path.
Hey, Jean Hopkins, you have your hand up. Jean's from Vermont.
Hi, I learned after my parents died, I was a descendant of the Mashpee Nipmuc Nation. And so just a small percentage of my whole genes and everything, but I just been very sensitive to the topic of Native Americans. And I'm just wondering, is there a nationwide organization of tribes? And because sometimes the tribes are recognized by the states and then they're not. And also I'm just concerned. I live near an office of Lockheed Martin, and now I'm living under the F-35 bomber jets flying over and just making horrendous noise. And so I'm thinking, golly, we've got to do something. And I'm just glad to hear all that you've done, Ian. Thank you. And we'll continue to do. Stay healthy.
I appreciate I
Jean,
appreciate that. I'm trying to stay healthy and do everything I can do because these other people have killed my family and they're not going to get
Yeah.
away with it. They've been killing my family and I don't like it. I don't care what the threats are. I do the right thing. Some of the things you try to do. Did you know that all fossil fuels contain uranium? Coal. They don't want you to know what the fracking fluid going down is, because if you knew that, you'd realize that when it comes out, it has radiation in it. It has uranium, okay? Coal. All coal contains uranium. When they burn it in a coal-fired power plant, it increases the concentration of the uranium, okay? Gasoline, oil, it collects in the piping. The same thing with the fracking fluid. And then they send those out to go get cleaned somewhere, but you don't hear about those things. They pull pounds of uranium out of the municipal water systems in California, some of the school districts, pounds of uranium. These materials are out there. They're in that whole fossil fuel layer from the dinosaurs. So the community that I was working at, the Moapa Band of Paiutes, they wanted me to shut down the coal-fired power plant. It took me a couple of years, but I did it because of the radiation in coal. It was blowing into the community. I was living there 400 yards from my house, okay? And the reasoning was based on our research in the 90s and our comments that we learned to make later to the Atomic Safety Licensing Board. Because of our past exposure to radiation and fallout from nuclear weapons testing, we cannot endure any increased burden of risk from any source, including coal ash tenorum, technologically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive material. So that's what's happening with this fossil fuel level. It is increasing the concentration of the uranium in the coal ash. It just increases the concentration of the uranium, which doesn't burn, but the coal does burn. This power plant was outside of Las Vegas, 50 miles, owned by California Water Resources. California was killing Indians even after it went green back in 2008 with their coal-fired power plant. This was the #1 polluter of the Grand Canyon. Well, we shut it down and it's completely gone now because of the radiation. But it was not easy. It took a little bit of time, and the people there are at least breathing better. So these are the things that we try to teach people about, try to educate people about how to protect themselves and how to use our understanding for their benefit. And so right now, NuScale is running around the country trying to sell these small modular reactors. They were up in northern Nevada earlier. And so I'm just going to ask people, if you know these things are happening, and you know there's an Indian treaty out there, and when it covers most of the land across this continent, they can't site that reactor there because they must prove site ownership free from significant encumbrances, which includes Native American rights, titles, and interests secured by treaties off the reservation.
Jean Versine, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I can think of 3 examples. I'll just give one. I interviewed some young women for a newsletter for WILPF a couple of years ago. And several points were very valuable, especially, the sacredness of the land and the contamination of the land that you've been talking about. One young woman from the state of Washington, and I have some ancestry related to Native Americans in the state of Washington, but this young woman said the piles of uranium and other poisonous substances from mining had contaminated her tribe, her nation. And so it meant that many people had died. There was a loss of culture, a loss of language, because the older people especially were the most vulnerable, and they were the ones who spoke the language, and they were lost in this contamination. And I had another extensive experience talking with the physicist who'd done studies in Germany, talking about the contamination by nuclear reactors from nuclear waste. So your points about both the implicit sacredness of the land and its contamination are very well stated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indeed, there's a cumulative effect for all of us, because all of us have been exposed to radiation during the the years of testing in since then, as Ian said, it's this kind of exposure is widespread. Ian, thank you so much. Your passion for the health of your people and the preservation of your land is palpable, and our Women, Money, and Democracy Committee has also been promoting and advocating for public banking as an alternative to the big Wall Street banks that bankroll mining and fracking and drilling and weapons manufacturing. And the theme of our upcoming National Congress next year is water on the front lines of peace. So thank you for your presentation. Cheryl, thank you for the information you offered for how members can get involved. Ian, if there's more that you think that we can do as WILPF members, please put any other information into the chat. And I'm going to call next on, please feel free to stay with our meeting as much as you can. Ian, I know you're not feeling great, but if you can, that would be great. I see Susie Garrett has her hand up. Go ahead, one more question, Susie. Are you on mute?
Unmuted. Aloha, Ian. I wanted to ask, I think you just said it, but my question is, how can we stand with and support you through these things? Is there some place we can go to know when these new testings are coming up? I know they just sent one to Kwajalein from Santa Barbara area, a missile, which they hadn't done in a while. But is there some place that you can lead us to that shows us what's coming up and what we can stand with you to say no to?
Yeah, we work pretty closely with Beyond Nuclear, Kevin Camps. He was in the photo earlier, and he'll be at our event next month on Zoom. That's probably the best place right now. We're still working on getting our organization back functioning better. Like I said, we well, a couple of things happened. We hired somebody who had a gambling problem in 2002 and took our organization for a nosedive. And so Margene Bull Creek and I were left, and we stopped the monitored retrievable storage in the Skull Valley Ghost Chute Shoshone reservation, and we stopped the proposed Yucca Mountain high-level nuclear waste repository. But we need to build in succession. Really what we need is for Congress to repeal the Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1987 and go look someplace else for a solution. But I don't know that there is a solution other than stopping the production of these weapons. You know, some of the things that I've learned just in the last couple of years is about the Krypton 84, Krypton 85, Krypton 86, the Cobalt 60. And the way I'm seeing the information is that these gases interact with our upper atmosphere and create charging. And this set off some 1,500 fires from Washington to Northern California. This is just my speculation, but when Trump went in and released those gases from Hanford after he became president, it set off fires. This is the way I'm reading the information. I only have half of the scientific method, which is good observation, but I also have an active imagination. So if I could do more research to tease those things out, I would. I share those things so that other people, you know, can possibly do that. I have a plan to go to UCLA and develop a grid based on the whole national, international grid, which the military uses for their targeting. I want to use that and turn it into something where we produce fallout maps from tree core samples on this grid globally. It'll work anywhere. Core samples on the grid and begin to develop a fallout map, finding the long-lived radionuclides that have been absorbed by trees. And in our country, and I think this is important, we know what we're trying to protect. We are different from the scientists and the engineers who can do anything. They can do pure science. They love it. They can build anything. And we're trying to protect the pure water. I am water. That's what we're trying to protect. Our trees, 6,800-year-old single tree, the Pando in our country, the bristlecone pine, single tree, 6,800 years old. Pando, 25 square miles, 80,000 years and older. Across our desert, we have the 11,700-year-old Yatumbi or creosote. All across our desert, we have the isolated species such as the devil's hole pupfish. We have the Tim's buckwheat, the only place in the world on 5 acres. We have as much diversity as the rainforest in our deserts of the Great Basin. We have bears. They get killed as soon as they're seen. Well, we have bears, we have frogs, we have birds, we have lions, they have monkeys, we have other types of animals, but that's what we're trying to protect. That's what we're trying to maintain, as well as our human place in relationship to these things. Other people come into our country and they're exploiting, they're violating our custom, which is law. They're violating the treaty, and they're continuing to exploit our land. So last year, President Biden put in his budget $700 million for a lithium mine in Shoshone country, and you don't hear a lot about that. We signed a treaty and allowed some of these things, but not to the extent such as nuclear weapons testing, where their actions would destroy us. No people would do that. So these weapons, these nuclear threats and hazards are under the UN Convention of Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, infliction of conditions intended to bring about the destruction of a people in whole or in part.
We have one more question from Darian, and then we're going to move on.
Yes.
Darian?
Yes, naturally, I was caught off guard. As I put in the chat, I understand that many important services like healthcare services and schools on native lands are funded by the federal government and would be all cut off in the event of a federal shutdown, which is looking more and more concerning given the disorder in Congress.
Yeah, but this is an ongoing, since our peoples were relocated to these reservations. I'm descended from Chief Kawich. Chief Kawich, which is Kawich Mountain, Kawich Peak, Kawich Valley, almost directly where Area 51 is. Okay, I'm descended from Chief Kawich, and my people went to the Yamba Reservation, the Duckwater Indian Reservation, where much of my family is, where much of my family was during the period of weapons testing, and were exposed to the fallout and dying. Yeah, our communities every year experience shortfalls of funding, and every year after or just before October, the new funding comes in. More Indians are dying. This is an ongoing thing. We deserve equal protection. We need help. We need collaboration. And this is what our Forum on Nuclear Issues usually does. I'm still working on the online registration for that. We have some good speakers. I'll throw something in the chat to let you know. But, you know, we're going to continue on and do the best we can to protect our land and our people and all people, because under these treaties, I have an obligation to protect you, other Americans, and you also have an obligation to protect my people. And I ask you to step up and, you know, bring those to the attention of your authorities and restrain those acts. These weapons and the funds that go into developing and producing them violate every Indian peace treaty across the continent, wherever the radiation goes.
We stand in solidarity with you, Ian, and we appreciate your work. Thank you so much. Cheryl, you are on the call. Can you say more about the work that WILPF is recommending on nuclear abolition between now and the end of the year and maybe into 2024?
Yes, and I'm hoping you or Ellen will screen share the text pad where I have put quite a lot of information about the DISARM Committee, our current, our recent, and our future actions. Just a small number of them, because we are a very active issue committee. And I'm hoping, yes, here we go. So if you can scroll down a bit more. Here we are. And I'm hoping those of you can, with big screens, can see this. So let me remind you that the mission of our committee has multiple parts to it. Abolishing war, of course, the second part of our name is end wars. So abolishing war and stopping arms of all kinds being produced and used is our top priority. We're also what we work for is a nuclear-free future, which means no nuclear weapons and shifting away from nuclear power production. We encourage diplomacy. That is a very important way of dealing with conflict, and this is one of the things we've been doing very strongly in the Ukraine-Russia war, and now we're starting to do that in this awful events that are happening in Israel and Gaza. So we educate the public and we raise consciousness about the relationship between environmental devastation and nuclear weapons. And that's not just when you actually explode a nuclear weapon, but that is what happens with the whole system that it takes to make those nuclear weapons, which is what our keynote speaker will be talking about today. So we have 11 ongoing campaigns, and we are a member of 7 coalitions with organizations who have similar goals to us. So one of those organizations, Mary Beth should be scrolling down, but she's now on the phone, so I'll just keep going. It's called Warheads to Windmills. Okay, this was started by the Nuclear Ban US people, and they are saying, you know, if we could just get rid of the nuclear weapons, that'll free up a bunch of money, and instead we'll use that money to mitigate and work against climate change. So we have certain demands about cutting carbon emissions by 2030, to cut global carbon emissions by 2030, for example, by half. And most importantly for you here, I'd like to invite you to a webinar this Saturday, the 14th of October, starting at noon in the East, 9 a.m. if you're in California, where we will have some experts talking about both the climate and the nuclear weapons threats and how we are dealing with them. So there will be some expert speakers, and if you'll just scroll down a little bit, Mary Beth, you will find the registration there in blue, which maybe Ellen could also put in the chat. And now a bit further down, you will see the flyer for this very informative event. There are climate experts, nuclear weapons experts, against nuclear weapons experts, and then we'll be talking about how to build a better movement, merging these two existential threats and into a movement that's showing the connection, which is quite strong. So then carrying on to another of our very important events, and what we've been doing, unfortunately, since March 2022, is urging for peace in Ukraine by diplomatic methods, not by sending more weapons. More weapons just extends this awful war, and lots more people will get killed. So there is a website there of our Peace in Ukraine website. The URL is there. And we just had a week of global actions. There were actions all over the world calling for a diplomatic solution to this war. And in there is the URL to the lots of photographs. Several branches, WILPF branches, I'm happy to say, took part in these actions. I was in San Francisco standing outside BlackRock, for example, an investment company with $6 trillion, of which much has gone into producing the weapons of war. And then, of course, BlackRock will help rebuild Ukraine, they say, when the war is over. So people investing via BlackRock are making money both in waging war and then after war, which we don't think is a good idea. So the last thing our major thing that I'll talk about is the striving to abolish nuclear weapons. And this is one of our major activities. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which I hope many of you have all heard about, is an outstanding treaty, has been ratified by 68 countries, or it could be 69 by now. They have all promised that they will have nothing to do with nuclear weapons, and neither to build them or let them be positioned on their land. And so there are some petitions you can sign there in the text pad. Then, of course, we are working with the DC Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton on HR 2775, which is a bill we're waiting for somebody to actually, bring it forward to the agenda of an Armed Services Committee to actually abolish nuclear weapons and use the money for climate mitigation. So the other thing that we're going to be doing in 2024, and this is partly related to the fact 6 of us will be going to New York City at the end of November as a delegation to the UN conference of those 68 countries. And we're going to be learning more about divesting from nuclear weapons manufacturers. ICANN, who's helping to organize, was one of the reasons this treaty actually exists, because ICANN pushed for it for 12 years. They got a Nobel Peace Prize on account of that effort. So we're going to be asking branches to create resolutions in their city councils that will say, our city doesn't want any nuclear weapons manufacturers in our geographic area, and we don't want the city to invest any money in these nuclear weapons manufacturers. So we will have resources, and we will be encouraging branches to do this. It's been done in about 70. There are 70 cities already done things like this, and there's an example there from Ojai and another example from Tacoma Park in Maryland. They've got resolutions, so it's not a big job. We can copy their resolutions. It's just your effort to go to your city council meetings and persuade them that these are resolutions that should be passed. And then, of course, they tell the Congress people, because it's the Congress people that hold the money. So it's just a way of influencing the federal government via your local councils. And so we welcome new members to our committee. You don't have to have any experience in disarmament. We have people who are already knowledgeable. You can join in our campaigns and learn. So there is how to join our committee. And thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Thank you. I'm done.
Darian, why don't you do your national announcements now?
Thank you. I primarily wanted to remind us that we are an organization of women and men who seek peace and justice. And these are the times in which our work is desperately needed: peace and justice and compassion. And if those are principles around which you are passionate, perhaps you would consider running for our national board. We have a number of seats open. There will be an e-alert coming out soon to list them. And there's an entire team of nominating committee people you can connect with and talk to learn more. And I'm checking on other points. I just wanted to be sure to mention that I wore this shirt today in honor of the work that Mary Beth has put in to the One WILPF calls over years and years, and worked with other volunteers and been able to produce something really excellent. So thank you, Mary Beth. I took more than
my pleasure.
I could add, if this is a good time, to just make a small announcement. We have a new communications committee that the occasion of this one WILPF call is one of our many forms of communications. And how does WILPF choose to address the changing nature of communications? These calls have been unable to get volunteers so far on an ongoing basis. It's not, well, people have put in a lot of time and it's appreciated. And I hope we can continue to see other communications. So if you're interested in the communications committee or other WILPF ad hoc committees, we have a website committee. Bylaws committee is always looking for the unusual person interested in bylaws. So president@wilpfus.org. president@wilpfus.org. Thank you.
Can we hear from Gloria McMillan about an exciting relaunch of our flagship Chicago branch, which has been, it was our first branch in the United States, founded by Jane Addams in 1915, and it's been inactive for about 20 years. So Gloria, can you tell us what we're planning for a restart? Is Gloria here? Okay, so I'll tell you what we're planning for a restart. On November 4th at 2 p.m. Central, which is noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern, we're doing
I'm here.
Oh, good, Gloria. Please take over.
It's going to be a Zoom event to restart the historic Chicago branch, because much of WILPF's history and the whole trajectory of how it came from being a Chicago movement to the global movement that catapulted Jane Addams and WILPF, the formation of WILPF, into the Nobel Peace Prize. This is never known. It's not connected. We have kind of an incoherent history because that's missing. So we have Rima Lunine-Schultz, who was the assistant director of the Hull House Museum, as our keynote speaker. And she's going to speak to some of these issues of race, class, peace, and these, navigating between often hostile sort of feuding groups, because there were many hostility. Well, the groups got along in that area around Hull House, but there were a lot of stresses due to being used as proxy ethnicities in the imperial wars of that time, just as we have them, the Eastern Europeans in particular, and the Palestinians and the Israelis.
Is this a flyer we are seeing?
You are seeing the flyer, I believe. Yes, the flyer.
Thank you.
And this tells a bit about Rima Lunine-Schultz and the history that is so woven into the Chicago branch, which sadly went inactive, but hopefully we can get it back. And we hope to make it an urban branch, a very inclusive and diverse branch, with a lot of leadership from local people who are people of color and, you know, diverse populations within the city of Chicago. So that's our goal. And we want to kick it all off on the 4th. And I just am making as many contacts between now and then so that we can really have a very large audience for this. And I guess I've taken my time that you wanted to give me.
Thank you, Gloria. And really, even though, you know, we're aiming at gathering people in the Chicago area, this is, as Gloria pointed out, a history that is of interest to anyone who cares about Jane Addams.
Right. And could I just cut in a minute? We are now in touch with International WILPF, and some of the leadership in membership of International WILPF are going to get it out to Europe and everywhere, because they know that this is of importance to the whole WILPF. There would be no WILPF if not for the work that Jane Addams did in Chicago.
Right.
So anyone can zoom into this presentation.
Yeah, welcome, warm welcome to anybody, and including, I think, people who don't belong to WILPF can come as guests.
Yes, absolutely. It's open to the public.
It's open
Here
to
is
anyone.
the registration link.
And especially if you have any family who may have a history where this area in particular, you know, is of interest to them. A lot of people don't live in the Chicago area, but they come from it, and they may wish to know about this history. It is American history. It's not just Chicago history.
And because it has so much to do with immigration,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
we are
yeah.
facing, especially in Chicago, we are facing huge issues with immigration. They are busing thousands of immigrants from Texas every day into
Mhm.
sanctuary cities, including Chicago.
Right.
These are lessons that Jane Addams learned and put in place that hopefully have some interest and can be helpful with our work in immigration in the future. So
Exactly. And Rima is so eager to share as much as she could share in half an hour or so of that.
we have Tura Campanella Cook, who is co-chair of our Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee. There's a lot going on in the Middle East. Tura, you have some announcements for us about what our members can do to intervene or support peace in that region. Go ahead, Tura.
Thank you, Mary Beth. I did, for the first time, put something in the text pad, and I wonder if it can be shared. It's only about 2 pages.
I'm looking for it now. I think I can get to it.
Okay, I wanted to remind everyone of the e-alert that our issue committee put out at the beginning of this week. And there was enough interest to also put it on the homepage of our organization where it is now. There are a lot of links in it to call Congress, to sign petitions, because terrible things are happening in Congress. There are very hawk-like resolutions coming forward for votes. They have bipartisan support, and it's very tiring and may feel futile to repeatedly call Congress, but you can say a slightly different thing each time, all coming back to the fact that we want de-escalation. We do not want more weapons sales to Israel. We want an immediate ceasefire and substantive talks, which include Hamas at the table. Let's see. Did I skip things earlier on? Oh, I think, what's going on?
I don't know what's going on here.
It seems to be broken up into different areas.
Yep, I'm not really
The
sure.
person I quoted from the Friends of Sabeel North America, who are a voice for Palestinian Christians, said that talking to people on Capitol Hill, that they are getting tons of calls for more weapons to Israel. And if they don't hear from us, you know, that's the way it's going to go. It's a very simple request that, you know, weapons do not bring peace, and the highly militarized life that Palestinians live with apartheid, and in Gaza with siege, have provoked this violence. There are a number of links in the text pad. And I'm sorry, I hope it wasn't something I did that made it jump all over the place.
No, it's all back to where it needs to be.
Okay, wonderful. I'm happy to take questions from people.
Raise your hand and we'll call on you. Darian, your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Tura, I wonder if you have encountered much response from WILPFers. Are people encouraging, asking questions? Are there concerns that people share?
We got some positive feedback saying, you know, thank you. This is a really strong e-alert. And we also got, you know, people who, one person in particular who felt offended that we weren't being as critical of Hamas as we were of the Israeli government. And the committee has talked about a response, but we've just been deluged with, you know, our own response work that we haven't, you know, to Congress, that we have not given her feedback, but we will.
Barbara Taft, your hand is up. Barbara is a former co-chair of the Middle East Committee. Go ahead, Barbara.
I just want to mention that we were going to say something about the Hamas booklet. Tura, would you do that?
Please, links to, well, our e-alert, like not too many others, does talk about how Hamas should be at the peace table. And we realize that members do not know much about Hamas if all they know is what they hear in the media. So some years ago, Barb Taft and another committee member, Ellen Rosser, did research on the party and wrote a booklet called Hamas at the Middle East Peace Table, Why? And it is in PDF format on our webpage, along with an update that was written in 2021. So the booklet, which took many years to write and was finished in 2015, still has important information about the history of Hamas. And if you want to know more, there is the update, and there is Barb, one of the co-authors, to answer questions. Shall I put our webpage? If you go to our webpage, and I'll put that link in the chat, you just scroll past our mission and vision, and the next section is resources. And there are the two links to the Hamas booklet and its update. It's also in the e-alert.
And
Yeah,
the e-alert is available.
Went out either yesterday or today, so you should be able to find it in your inbox.
And it's on the homepage in the Get Involved area.
Good. Thank you, Tura. It's a very concerning situation, and it's just really heartbreaking to see this kind of primitive response to conflict. It's
Exactly, thank you. People have said it feels like watching in real time the extermination of Indigenous people.
yeah.
Oh, it looks like Cheryl has her hand up, and somebody
Sorry,
else.
go ahead, Cheryl.
Yes, just to say that, as I've mentioned before, I do watch the BBC News website, and they have people inside Gaza, journalists inside Gaza and the various areas just outside Gaza and Tel Aviv. So they are very much carrying the story from the Palestinian point of view. And one statistic I saw a few hours ago was that there are 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza right now. And there's several thousand of them are due to give birth in the coming month. And the hospitals have run out of medicine, electricity, etc., etc. So as unfortunately is often the case, it's the women and children who suffer the most in war. And this is a point, you know, I made in my speech last week at the Peace in Ukraine demonstration in San Francisco. And this was just a another example of that unfortunate fact that it's the women. And so being a women's organization, we need to keep highlighting this and using it in our appeals for diplomacy and humanitarian aid. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. Okay, so last March, we sent a delegation of members and students to the UN Commission on the Status of Women for the first time in 3 years. Now that COVID is hopefully in the rear view mirror, we hope again this year, actually in March of 2024, to send a delegation to the UN Practicum for Advocacy, which has been evolving. Shilpa Pandey is here to report on details and ask for help in promoting the program. Go ahead, Shilpa.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Mary Beth, can you
share the...
do you have that to share?
Let's see where, I have to see where it is.
Yeah, there's one I can see if you scroll down a little bit more.
Is it on the text pad, Shilpa?
Yes, it should be. See, I can already see this. Yeah, and then, oh, no, this is not the one. Okay, never mind. I can, let me.
I think it's in your email, so let me find it. And
okay, well, while you bring that up, I just wanted to mention that next, 1 second, I'm sorry, I'm slightly distracted. Okay, it's up. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this is our flyer. We are soliciting applications from young, motivated students, youth leaders, and budding community builders to apply for this program. And just to add to the Chicago Restart efforts, I wanted to mention that this program can potentially be one of the ways in which we encourage and are able to attract younger women to join our organization. So if you know a daughter or granddaughter or neighbor, if you want to sponsor them, please reach out to myself. And the applications are already online, and we are accepting them on a rolling basis. The last date to apply is not until January 2024, but that's way later. We hope that we can get more and more people to apply beforehand. If you want to know more about the application process or the program itself, please feel free to reach out to me. And if you can see the flyer, some of the highlights of what the applicant gains by participating in these programs is right here. They get to network with peace activists and leaders from across the globe. They can connect with national and international, offering careers in diplomatic and feminist peace work. They get to attend high-level UN meetings, panel discussions, and events hosted by member governments. They get to attend events hosted by civil society, and they also get to network with other folks at this program. And we also offer gift membership for 1 year to all of these applicants. So this is our way. This is one of the way that WILPF is trying to outreach to younger, diverse members in our community. And one additional thing that I'd like to add is that unlike other years where this program only accepted applications from those that were enrolled in traditional study programs, such as in colleges or universities, unlike other years, this year we are also going to accept applications from those that may not be enrolled in a university or a college, but are actually young activists working in nonprofits, or they are interested in building a career in feminist peace building. So yeah, so here's another way that you can help us by becoming a sponsor for this program. And as the flyers say, your sponsorship will prepare the next generation of global leaders working for peace, justice, and human rights. So that's pretty much the information I had. to share. And I'm going to put down my email address so that if you have more questions, you can please reach out to myself. And of course, all of this is also available on our website under our programs. But I'm happy to provide a more detailed information if needed. And here is my email address for everybody to
Thank
reach
you,
out.
Shilva, for that update. And these are really encouraging updates. And let's hope you get a ton of applications. You may want to send this information to Ian, who I believe has left our call, but who may know some young Native women who would be interested in applying.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent. Yes. And everybody here, if you know, I'm sure you all know more and more activists like that. Please share this flyer. Should I just share this flyer on the chat? Maybe that way. I'll let me post this flyer on the chat so you all have access to that. And then use this, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to do that right away.
I think the last announcement we have is from my committee, the Women, Money, and Democracy Committee. Our committee works on economic justice issues, especially as they affect women and families. Our ally and partner organization, An Economy of Our Own, is sponsoring a Zoom on Monday, October 16th. It's coming up very fast. It's at 7:30 Eastern. We hope our members will attend and also promote it widely. I'm going to share again the, hopefully, I'm going to share the, maybe I'm not going to share the, here it is, there. The call thing, here we are. Down here, this is the topic, overcoming financial trauma, what's systemic, what's personal, and what helps. And the topic, the featured speakers are Rianne Eisler, a feminist icon, Andrea Barrett from the Banker Ladies, Jacqueline Strenio, who is a feminist economist from Northrop University, and Shonda Williams, who is who does financial training, especially for women of color. Let's see, I think I can find if I stop sharing, I think I can find in this script here tonight the link for joining that, for registering for that call. And if I can, I will put it in the chat. Darian, did you have more to announce? I feel like we cut you off and I didn't really mean to, but
I was only scheduled for 4 minutes. The primary other thing I might have mentioned is I hope we can all celebrate our accomplishments and the precious things in our lives in order to reinforce our humanity and resilience to deal with bomb throwing in the Middle East and bomb throwing in the House of Representatives. These are difficult times, historic in many ways. And I am very impressed by the women I work with in WILPF. Tura did a lovely job of the flyer, and it was a pleasure to get to work with you on that, Tura. George Friday has been working with an entire nominating committee to solicit and publicize about the nominations opportunity to suggest who would be good on our board, and of course to apply for the board. We have so many good people doing good things. Our mini grants committee has worked for years to fund different WILPF undertakings, And we're now looking at how do we want to continue that? So many of the structures we've had in place are challenged with these changing times, so that it's time to rebuild to some extent. How do we retrofit? What will make it energy sustainable in all facets of energy? So for me, these are exciting times to be part of the leadership for WILPF US, a national organization in an international group, an international organization. And here we are in the United States, which has, as government, seemed to say some horrific things in response to the latest outbreaks of violence. I'm saddened to see the pain and suffering going on in Eastern Europe be pushed out of the headlines by the pain and suffering in Afghanistan to be pushed out of the headlines by what's going on now in, I think it's Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia. My geography is good, but my cardinal points aren't. Anyway, so thank you, Mary Beth, for the chance to speak more. I really appreciate WILPFers as women and men who are committed to things and realize that it's our actions that can make a difference in at least our local world.
Lenny, did you have something you wanted to share?
No, actually, I wasn't feeling well, but if I'm going to speak, I will just say that we had a very exciting retreat together with the U.S. Women in Cuba collaboration, that we have exciting plans for the next couple of years. And we hope that you will all want to participate. I'd also like to say that just as it is a war crime to do siege warfare on Gaza and cut off a civilian's population's access to food, medicine, and everything else. It's a war crime also, and has been going on for over 60 years in Cuba.
This is our last One Wolf call of 2023. The future of these calls is not certain, but we may continue with our quarterly schedule in 2024, depending on the urgency of topics that rise up and the willingness of volunteers who come forward to help facilitate the calls. We've organized these all-member calls in Zooms for about 7 years, first monthly and now quarterly. Thanks to our team members over the years for their dedication and commitment, including Michael Ippolito, Ann Henney, Sandy Thacker, and more recently, Ashley Carrington, and of course, Ellen Thomas. Without them, these calls might never have happened. It's been our privilege to provide this safe space for members to come together, get to know one another, and to organize solidarity actions across the U.S. So, we hope that you all have a wonderful fall and a wonderful holiday season, whatever holidays you celebrate. Please remember to include a gift for WILPF in response to our end of year appeal. That is really important for continuing our work. The appeal helps fund our work for the whole year, and you can donate online at www.wilpfus.org/donate. Your support fuels our activism and enables us to work and organize across the whole US. Let's take a moment to turn on our mics and say goodnight, but don't leave yet. If you can, stick around for our soapbox segment. It follows immediately, and it's where we get to shoot the breeze and get to know each other a little bit. It offers maybe 20-minute space for comparing notes from our branches or communities and just getting to know each other a little better. So good night, everybody. Stay tuned for the soapbox if you can.
Thank you very
Good night,
much.
all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Well done, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
You are such an important resource to us. Please
Yes.
don't stop.
Thank you very much.